World War II. Merchant Marines, World War II, Paul Kistler.
Damn the torpedoes! Full speed ahead! This was a battle cry first heard in the Civil War, but it was repeated over and over again in both word and deed in World War II. Damn the torpedoes! Full speed ahead. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. This is a story about my dad and the men of the greatest generation who served in the Merchant Marine, and their service was forgotten in World War II, and some of the injustices that were done to them. The Merchant Marine is a fleet of ships that carries import and exports during peacetime. During wartime, they're a naval auxiliary that transports troops and war material. My dad served on the tanker SS Kakalakayo. It was a 400-foot decrepit old rust bucket that was built in 1919. It had a top speed of 8 knots. By contrast, German U-boats had a top speed of 18 knots on the surface, 8 knots when submerged. Not exactly a fair fight. My dad and his fellow sailors faced danger from submarines, mines, armed coastal marauders, destroyers, airplanes, kamikazes. 1,554 ships were sunk during World War II. Those that weren't sunk, many were damaged by bombs, shells, and mines. 9,400 merchant marines lost their lives during World War II. 11,000 were wounded. 663 men and women were taken prisoner of war. They faced being blown apart, incinerated, drowned, froze to death, starved to death. 66 of them died as prisoners of war. 31 ships left port and just simply vanished, never heard from again. The Merchant Marines suffered the highest casualty rate of all the services in World War II. 1 in 25 Merchant Marines that left port never returned. Casualty rate of 4%. In comparison, the Marine Corps had a casualty rate slightly less than 3%. The Army was slightly over 2%. The Navy less than 1%, and the Coast Guard had a casualty rate of less than 0.25%. When I was researching my dad's role in the Merchant Marine in World War II, I was totally disgusted to find out that gossip columnists during World War II wrote stories that the Merchant Marines were draft dodgers and getting fabulously wealthy by exorbitant wages. One gossip monger even wrote a story that said that the Merchant Marines refused to unload their ship off of Guadalcanal due to Union rules. Instead, sick and injured Marine Corps Marines had to unload the ships. This was totally untrue. All the military commanders at the time had nothing but praise for the Merchant Marines. Even the admiral in the South Pacific wrote and said that the incident off of Guadalcanal was not true. The National Merchant Union, they sued the gossip columnists and the newspapers, and they won. The newspapers were forced to retract their stories. However, the damage that lasted for decades was already done. Merchant Marines only got paid when they were on their ship. They didn't get paid when they were on leave. If their ship sank as the waves closed over their ship, their pay ended. If they were lucky enough to get onto a lifeboat and maybe taken prisoner of war, they and their families did not get paid. My dad and his Merchant Marine buddies were true patriots. My dad tried to join the Navy, but he was rejected for medical reasons. The Merchant Marines, however, they took men that were too old for the draft. They took boys as young as 16. They took men that had heart conditions, men that had poor vision, missing eyes, missing limbs. These were the men who volunteered for the Merchant Marines. Once World War II was over, the Merchant Marines did get to take advantage of the GI Bill, low-interest home loans. It took a court ruling in 1988 to even give them access to federal medical care through the VA. Almost every Congress has introduced a bill to give recognition to the Merchant Marines since they were not able to take advantage of federal programs after the war. The latest bill was actually introduced in January 2015 by Representative Janice Hahn. This would give the Merchant Marines a one-time payment of $25,000 to compensate them for not being able to take advantage of federal programs. These bills have never been acted on. I urge Congress at this time to recognize the contribution of the Merchant Marines in World War II before it's too late. Mr. Toastmaster.